My Next Breath is Jeremy Renner's story of being run over by a 7-ton snowcat and living to tell about it. This book is not for everyone, so let me tell you why. Hi, I'm Amanda, and this is Spineless Books, your one-stop spoiler-free shop for all things audiobook. Now, when Jeremy Renner had his accident on January 1st of 2023, I heard about it in the news, I heard that he sustained multiple injuries, and I heard that it was serious. I had no idea how serious, and this book spares no detail. There is very little in this memoir other than the accident. There's a little bit of a lead-up and a tiny bit of an introduction, but he gets right into it. The entire first half of the book is from the morning of the accident, essentially, to the accident itself. The second half of the book is the recovery. The book is narrated by Jeremy Renner himself, which I can imagine was exceedingly difficult. In fact, he talks a little bit about that in the introduction. But I think this book is really important to hear in his words, even though it's really intense and really difficult. I burned through this audiobook, which was about 7 hours long, in a single day. I had to know what happened. I mean, I know the outcome. I know he survives. But I still just was on the edge of my seat as far as the details of this accident and his recovery. I took breaks for meals, but other than that, I was pretty much glued to this book for the entire day. I was in no way prepared for the amount of detail about his accident on January 1st, 2023. You need to know that this book is graphic. Renner never loses consciousness during the accident, so he's able to recount minute by minute what happens, and it's intense and it is really, really specific. You hear everything about what his body endured and experienced and how it felt and what he was thinking. I mean, the detail this book provides is unbelievable. I don't want to mislead you into thinking that this is an impeccably written memoir, but I have to say it does the job and it does it well. You will understand every single detail of what happened to him. I would say the first half of this book takes place in about an hour of realistic time. But one thing I want to make sure that you know is to be prepared. This might be the one time I would actually caution against the audiobook, as crazy as that might sound. Something I was not prepared for, and I don't think this is a spoiler so much as a warning. There is actual tape from the 911 call at several points in the audiobook. They don't warn you, they just play it. Now, there were not a lot of people around Renner when the accident happened, but you can hear everything. You can literally hear him struggling to breathe. It's incredibly intense. I was not prepared. I was not expecting it. I did not think that was going to happen. And boy, if that didn't pull me into this book even harder, I don't know what did. I really, really felt compelled to hear the rest of the story, but it was one of the hardest parts of an audiobook I have ever had to listen to. It just came out of nowhere, and I didn't expect it, and I didn't expect to be able to hear him struggling to breathe after hearing him describe how he was struggling to breathe. It was a powerful, powerful moment, but it is not for the faint of heart. I found myself wanting to take a break after the details of the accident were finished, but I have to say that the recovery was pretty much just as harrowing. He went through some incredible things, and the fact that his body made it to the other side of this is beyond belief. I think, in spite of how much Renner seems to have wanted to avoid this, he does come across as a little bit of a Superman. This man should not be alive, and he gets that. But there's also a lot that he talks about that, believe me, I know I would not have been able to get through. He shares his mindset in depth, but I really think it's unusual, and maybe he was sort of one in a million in this circumstance. I mean, again, there's no way this man should be alive. I don't think I'd have been alive if all of these things happened to me, and the fact that he recovered so quickly is just beyond belief. I mean, I know he's not Superman, but maybe he kind of is. There's a huge acknowledgement of his privilege in this story. He recognizes that financially he was able to afford the best support. He also recognizes that he has an enormous amount of family support. And he recognizes that he was able to take the time to heal his body without having to worry about any concerns like working again or things of that nature. So I appreciated that Renner shared his awareness of how unusual his circumstance is in that regard. Renner also spoke a lot about the way that this accident impacted all those around him. He felt a great responsibility towards the people in his life who were impacted and felt like recovery was the one thing he could do for them in order to ease their burdens. Now, that's a beautiful motivator, but I also feel like it's kind of intensely wonderful in a way that I'm not 100% sure I believe, and I think that may have been inflated a bit for the story. But again, given that I don't know Renner personally, it's hard to say. I felt like there was a little conflict in the book between I'm a hero, I'm not a hero, but Renner talks about his mind over matter abilities. In fact, he also shares some unique training that he had done in the past that he thinks was uniquely suited to help him survive this accident. Again, it's kind of like the opposite of a perfect storm in that Renner was just the perfect person to survive this accident. I would probably be dead and buried if it had happened to me, but there's something about Renner, or several somethings about Renner, that made it okay for him to go through this and get through this. There's no doubt that Renner's acting background enhances the narration. He knows how to pull authentic and genuine emotion into the appropriate parts. Again, I can't imagine how difficult it was for him to write and narrate this book, but he seems to do it with ease. While it's by no means a literary masterpiece, it is 100% effective in carrying the viewer through the emotion and the intensity of the events, and really conveying the difficulty of the situation for Renner and all of his family members and friends who were around him during this difficult time. Ultimately, I found it to be an inspirational story of resilience. I don't think this is an average person going through an average event, but Renner is clearly using his celebrity status to create something motivational and inspirational, and I can't fault him for that. I think my biggest takeaway from this book is that you cannot get through adversity of this nature alone. Renner repeatedly spoke about the incredible support system of his friends and family and how motivating they were for him, but also how every single one of them was impacted. I was particularly touched by his caretaking of his young daughter. He speaks at length about the ways in which he wanted her protected from this event, and it's clear that that attitude towards his child and his raising of his child is very shared within his family, because all those around him, when he was unable to do so, protected his daughter from this tragedy as much as they could. Not that he never revealed to her what happened, but in the moment when things were uncertain, he put her emotional well-being first, as did his family members. I think if you have interest in Renner as an actor, or you know of this accident and want to learn a little bit more or a lot more about it, or you're just really interested in a gripping, harrowing survival story, then this book is for you. I rated it a 4.5 because I think the writing could have been cleaned up a little bit. There were a lot of things that felt particularly repetitive in this story, but listen, it's a memoir about a tragic accident that Renner somehow made it through. Am I going to fault the guy for it? No. Regardless, please know before you go into this story that it is really difficult. The audiobook in particular, because those 911 calls really threw me. I was not expecting them, and I was not prepared, and they were really, really hard to hear. But if you're ready to take on this book, I'd advise you carve out some time. This is going to be the kind of story you're not going to want to put down, and even when you get to the recovery portion, you still want to know everything that's happening. So you're going to want to make sure that this is a book you pick up either on vacation or when you've just got a couple of days to kill, or if you do the audiobook like me, you've got those 7 hours set aside because it's going to keep you on the edge of your seat for sure. You might also find it's a story that emotionally you just don't want to linger on, so be prepared for that and know ahead of time that it's a good story in that he survives and recovers, but boy, those details are tough. But remember, you might love what I hate and hate what I love, so make your own opinion, but thanks for listening to mine. I really hope you like and subscribe. It helps the channel immensely, and as I'm trying to grow this thing on my own, I'd really appreciate the support. Thanks so much. See you next time.